right, as far as injuries are concerned, we'll have a couple guys. The guys that will rule out for the game will be Josh Wallace and Kevin Dotson. Guys that will have questionable tags will be Blake Corum, Davante Adams, Alec Jackson, Omar Spates, and Kyron Williams.
Is there a possibility that Dotson is ready for the playoffs?
There's a possibility, but we'll see. We're kind of just taking that a week at a time. We'll see how today goes. That'll be a big indicator on, what that looks like. I feel good about Kyron. Kyron was able to have a good practice load yesterday. Davante was able to get out there and go through individual. He felt really good. And then, we'll get Blake out there, and I'll have a better sense of that. So today will give us a little bit more clarity.
Will the circumstances of Saturday night change the way you approach the starters on Sunday at all?
No.
Okay.
Your reaction to the Quentin Lake?
Oh, yeah, really, really happy for him, Gary. Well-deserving. He's a guy that, similar to some of the other players that we've talked about that have gotten these extensions or, that we've kind of onboarded, represents everything that we love about what we want to be about, the values, the principles. But, I think he's had great production, great versatility. But more importantly, I think you look at it, there's a reason why he's basically been unanimously voted as a captain the last couple years. He's got an incredible way about himself. I think some of these special players, they elevate people that they're around in situations they're a part of. You've heard me talk about that before. That's who Quentin Lake is. I love him. I love the journey that he's been on, and I'm really happy that he stuck with me for a few more years.
I know he was just out there, for the first time yesterday. How does he look? How's Tyler Higbee look? And how are you feeling about your roster coming together for the playoffs in terms of having everyone
feel
back?
Good? I think we're getting healthy at the right time. Fortunately, we've had some injuries and we've had some guys that have been out of the lineup, and there is a reason why those guys that have been missed are starters. Because they give us the best chance to play at the optimum levels. I do feel good. We ask about Kevin. I'm interested to see how he's feeling. But I do feel good. I thought Higbee's looked really good. I think we'll be able to, start him, and I expect him to be able to play this week, depending upon if today goes well. And then as far as, Q, I thought he looked good. He was able to get out there, move around a little bit. He would be a guy that our expectations and our plans are for him to be able to, play against in the wild card round.
The last few years hasn't impressed him definitely at safety or linebacker. Do you feel like these extensions for Quentin and Nate Landman signal anything different about how you guys are?
I think what's cool about it, Adam, is it represents that there still are, you say it's a position, but okay, what about this player? What about Nate Landman and Quentin Lake? They are a linebacker, and Q plays safety, plays the star for us, but, who are they as people? What do they represent? How do they elevate the spaces that they're in and the people that they're around? And so I think it does say something about, those individuals in particular relative to some of the history that you're alluding to, but that's what it's always about. This is always about people. You have individual positions and different markers and things like that, but it still does boil down to those human beings, and those are the kind of guys that you feel really good about wanting to be on these challenging journeys with and be able to work through, stay humble in the good times, be able to stay steady in some of the moments of adversity. And I think that's more what that is a reflection of. But there's also been some learning ops. I can look at, and it's evolving, and it's never static and steady. You look at, if we talked about the evolution of just, position value and different things like that, number one is always about the players. But also those things evolve on a year-to-year basis because this league and coaches and players do such a good job of making it as challenging as possible to sustain a certain level of success.
What was it about Davante that made you want to recruit?
Well, his body of work, and then just getting to know him. You hear about him, Sarah, but the body of work, like I've talked to you guys about, I'm just a fan of this game and, a vision of what he could do. I had some familiarity with what a special human he was because Matt LaFleur and I are so close, and he's worked, he worked with him in those, special years that they had together in Green Bay. So it's the person, the player, the production, and kind of the vision that we had for what he could do, And he's been awesome. He's been everything that we'd hoped for and that much more. And I think the thing that's been cool about it, where you really get a chance to learn, is, man, he's had a lot of really cool things that he's brought to life and added value to our football team. And then there's also been some, challenging moments where nobody wants to be out there more than him. That's frustrating to have that hamstring injury, but watching how he's handled that has given me some insight into what a special human being he is and the mental toughness and just the fortitude and resilience that he has. And so those are some of the reasons.
He's been really open about how much it means to be here, the culture you built and everything.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
it means everything. I mean, I think our job, you want to try to create or try to help create and cultivate an atmosphere and an environment where, there's urgency, there's enjoyment, but it inspires people to be at their best. And we want guys, this isn't easy, but you want guys leaving here not, wanting to come back the next day. And, I'm not going to pretend to be perfect, but man, I'm surrounded by a lot of really good coaches and players that, man, they inspire you to want to try to continuously do that. And it is really, really important, to try to continuously help people move forward as human beings, most importantly. And oh, by the way, the things that move you forward as a human being also move you forward as a football player. They're not mutually exclusive. And so that's what we try to be able to focus on, whether that's learning opportunities, whether that's staying humble in the good times, and making sure that, there's the urgency because the work works and it's not always easy, but it's worth it. But there's also that enjoyment and that celebration for other success. And I think that's where you really realize everybody talks about being a part of something, it's special to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And, guys like Davante and our players, they do a great job of making that come to life here.
Is there a moment during your time here that you realized you had built that culture that had shown us?
Well, I think it's never ending. I think culture is always evolving and adapting. And so I think, the consistency, it's the moment is when I reflect on the special people and the relationships that have been built over time and the character of those people. And then I've learned a lot, like I've talked to you about, from some of the mistakes, but more times than not, it's always about those people. I feel very blessed and fortunate to work for a great owner in Mr. Kroenke and the Kroenke family in general, to be alongside of Les and Kevin and Tony and really to be able to lead alongside our coaching staff and really to do it with the players as well. So this is a special place and it's always about the people, and we've had great people here.
So, yeah, said my way about to have a good practice last week.
Yeah.
What do you report to feel like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the appropriate urgency and enjoyment and really just making sure that, hey, what's done is done. We want to be able to learn from it, but let's not live in the past. Let's not be ahead of ourselves. Let's be totally and completely present. And, without getting too much in depth, I think, when I'm trying to reflect on, all right, are we inspiring the guys to be able to do the right thing? There's some moments that you look at as a coach and where can we help, inspire and make sure that there's clarity of, what the mission is in mind. And so that's where I'm grateful to be able to have opportunities to be able to do that. But I like the way they've handled it. And, I'm optimistic because in a lot of instances, our good weeks of practice preparation and performance has led to game reality. And there were some moments that was demonstrated, but not enough. And some of the things that we, had a tough time overcoming got us, and we'll learn from it and apply it moving forward. All right. Thank you, guys.
Puka, how do you guys kind of get that swagger back?
I think the swagger comes from the confidence comes from our preparation. I think the result that happens on Sunday it wasn't what we wanted, but going throughout the days that we've have practice, doing the same things that we've been doing since winning our first one against the Texans. So I think that's been kind of the mindset of getting back to what makes us who I feel like we are, and that's practicing hard. And I feel like we have an opportunity to get the limited reps we could get of good on good, and we try to take advantage of those moments.
Coming off last week to this week in practice or in the building, do you have any different feel, any different urgency, or are you guys just coming off the loss, trying to reset it? Has it been the same as it was today?
I think there's definitely an uptick in the urgency, and I think is something that Coach McVay always emphasizes, the urgency, but also the enjoyment as well. So as much as there is a firm voice and the things that we need to correct, there's also an excitement for the things that we did do well and the opportunities that we had to enjoy our success. So and try to build on those moments. So I think it has been an uptick, and also this is our last one at home. So I know for me personally, the opportunity to play in front of our home crowd and have our families out here is also always a blessing to have. So it'll be fun.
With
How do you feel about
I think in the walkthrough, I think in the tempo and the opportunities we have to lift in the short week and stuff like that, and just kind of in the tent walkthroughs and in the meetings, the questions, how we're installing the level of communication. I feel like it's in every different area of that we're working to get better in. You just feel the coach his terms totally and completely present.
with
Davante has talked about what the culture is like here. I know this is the only position you played for, but I'm curious, has he said anything to you in the last year about what makes this place special?
I know one of the first things that he mentioned, probably around training camp, was just how, like, in the lunchroom, like the cafeteria, how intermix the units are offense, defense, and from the O-linemen to the receivers to the running backs to the tight ends. And that's something that I've always enjoyed. I think of my first place in the locker room was next to Big Rob, who's been in this organization the longest. So not saying much and always listening to what was said. And I think of who he was hanging out with and just the mixing of how that makes this place feel more like a brotherhood than the football game already provides.
Where does that come from, or where does that start?
I guess everything comes from top down. I think if you talk to Coach McVay, whether he's up here or you're having a one-on-one conversation, the personable attributes that he has and how well he's able to connect with everybody, I think gives everybody that comfort level with everyone else.
With Higbee back practicing, Davante practicing, Quentin Lake back, do you feel like you guys are kind of rounding back to full strength for the playoffs?
I think so. It's fun to have all those guys out there, and I'd say their presence is definitely missed. I know, especially obviously not having Tay out there. That's the guy who leads all of our drills, and everybody is always watching. So those opportunities are not taken for granted when he's not out there running our individual drills, or we're not getting to watch him run routes during practice. And I know one of the routes I had during the week, I was like, man, I felt like Tay at the top of my route. I was like, I know Tay's done this before. Like, I've seen this so many times. So, but then it makes it fun because the questions when he comes back that we have, and then just that the standard that he's set is he feels like it's risen, and we're continuing to hold that standard.
When Davante isn't out there leading drills, do you kind of step into that role?
I think a little. I guess because maybe I'm second in line. That's normally how it goes. So, but yeah, I guess it is fun to set the standard and to know that I'm the one that is the standard I've seen before me. I got to uphold that. So it's a fun challenge.
Puka, moving into the last game of the season, what are 3 words you would use to describe the entire season?
Swag would be one of them. I think physical. And angry would be the other one. I think that would be my 3.
You have a chance on Sunday, based on how that goes, to possibly finish as the NFL's leader in receptions or yards. I know the top goal is always winning, but is that something you thought about? Would it mean something to you to be able to be the top receiver in the NFL?
I think obviously, and to the people I've had the luxury of being behind in the NFL, one. To Cooper Cup, I think it would be a special meeting to me, and just the relationship that I have with him, but then also to honor our guy number 9 and the effort and everything that he puts into this game of football and that I've been able to be a part of in the 3 years that I've been in the NFL with him. It has truly been a blessing. So whether it comes or it doesn't, it'll be one in the history books for my family and for myself. So I think it'll work out no matter what.
Throughout his career, we've talked about how he gets the pass catchers. What's your notice?
I feel like this kind of comes at something that I've said about him just being a leader, but I think the level of communication and how much that builds understanding and trust and the ability on an in-cut to know exactly what he's thinking of, how he's seeing backside defenders, how he's seeing underneath coverage, and then for me to understand that and be able to communicate how I'm seeing things as well, so we can get on the same page and we have great results on Sunday.